Hello my lovely dark readers and welcome back to my channel. My name is Sarah and this is The Dark Spine, the little corner of the internet where there's only one rule for our books: the darker, the better. Now, there are books that continue a story, and then there are books that completely transform it. Heir of Fire is not just a continuation, it's a turning point, a widening of the world, a deepening of the characters, and a shift in tone that makes you realise this series is building towards something far bigger than you first expected. Oh my word. This book had me completely invested from start to finish. Today I am talking about Heir of Fire by Sarah J. Maas. Now, like all fans of the Maasverse, I am super excited for the next instalment of the ACOTAR series, and I'm trying my hardest to work through her collection so far, so I don't get any spoilers. Heir of Fire is the third book in the Throne of Glass series, and I gave it a very confident 5 stars on Fable, and I don't say that lightly. This was the book where everything clicked into place for me, where I stopped seeing this series as just an enjoyable fantasy read and started seeing it as something layered, emotional, and carefully building towards something massive. At this point in the series, Celaena Sardothian is no longer just an assassin navigating survival in a brutal world. She is carrying far more than that. The weight of her past is catching up with her, her identity is shifting, and the consequences of everything she's experienced so far are starting to surface in a way she can't ignore anymore. What Heir of Fire does so well is take her out of her comfort zone completely. She's not just physically displaced, she's emotionally and mentally pushed into unfamiliar territory as well. And that is where this book really begins to shine. Because when a character like Celaena is stripped back like that, you start to see who she really is underneath everything she's built around her to survive. The journey Celaena goes on in this book is epic. Not in a loud, flashy, constantly explosive way, but in a slow, powerful, deeply emotional way that builds and builds until you realise just how much has changed. Celaena's forced into isolation in many ways, not just from other people, but from who she thought she was. And that's where the real transformation begins. There are moments where she is angry, moments where she is broken, moments where she resists change completely, and moments where she begins to slowly and reluctantly open herself up again. It's not a straightforward arc. It feels messy, human, real. And that's what makes it so compelling to read. Because you're not just watching a character level up or gain new abilities. You're watching someone rebuild themselves from the inside out. And I found myself completely invested in that process. One of the strongest elements of Heir of Fire is how much the world expands. So in the earlier books, the world already feels established. You understand the basics, you understand the politics, the danger, and the structure of power. But here, everything grows. We're introduced to entirely new regions, new systems of magic, and new layers of history that completely reshape how you view everything that came before. The world stops feeling like a backdrop and starts feeling like a living, breathing force that directly influences the characters and their choices. There is a sense that everything is interconnected in ways we're only beginning to understand. And that is incredibly exciting as a reader because it means the story is no longer contained. It's expanding outwards in every direction. You start to realize this is not just a story about one assassin, it's a story about an entire world on the edge of something much larger. Now, I will be honest, one of the challenges I had with this book was the sheer number of new characters introduced. There are a lot of perspectives, a lot of names, and a lot of moving pieces. And at times it was quite difficult to keep track of who is who, especially when you're still emotionally attached to the characters from the earlier books. There were moments where I had to pause and remind myself how certain people connected to the wider story. However, this is also part of what makes this book feel so expansive. It's not a simple narrative anymore. It's becoming a multi-threaded story where different arcs are building alongside each other. And while that can feel overwhelming at times, it also adds depth because even when you're not fully focused on every character, you can still feel that each storyline matters. Each one is building towards something. One of the strongest additions in Heir of Fire for me is the introduction of Manon Blackbeak. She immediately stands out as one of the most compelling new characters in the series. She's not designed to be instantly likable. She's sharp, she's disciplined, and shaped by a harsh and unforgiving world. Sometimes she's really, really mean, even to people she supposedly likes. And her storyline with her coven is intense and often unsettling, but also incredibly engaging. What makes her arc so interesting is the internal conflict that slowly begins to emerge. There are cracks in her worldview that she doesn't fully understand yet, but as a reader, you start to notice them forming. Her sense of identity and loyalty and purpose is constantly being tested, and that makes her incredibly fascinating to follow. She feels like a character who is being set up for something much bigger than what we see in this book alone. And I'm really excited to follow the rest of her story in the other 4 books in the series. And then there is Abraxos. Oh, Abraxos. He is one of those characters who quietly steals your attention and your heart without needing to do anything dramatic. There's something incredibly soft and unexpected about his presence in the story. In a world filled with violence, control, bigger is more powerful, and rigid expectations, Abraxas feels like a breath of something gentler. And his bond with Manon adds emotional depth to her storyline in a way that feels meaningful without being forced. It creates contrast, it creates balance, and it gives us a different side to a character who otherwise exists in a very harsh environment. Some of the most memorable emotional beats in this book for me came from their connection. It's subtle, it stays with you. I think my favourite moment so far of this whole series is when Manon and Abraxos come face to face and it's the start of something that you just know it's going to be special, and it just melts your heart. Oh, it's lovely. Another thing I really appreciated in Heir of Fire is the shift in tone. The series starts to feel heavier here, more layered, more emotionally complex. There's a sense of distance in parts of the story, especially when Celaena is separated from familiar environments and characters. But that distance is intentional. It reflects where she is emotionally. It reflects the isolation she's experiencing internally as well as externally. And it makes the moments of connection that much more powerful when they do happen. The pacing of this book is interesting as well. It's not fast in a traditional sense. It takes its time introducing new settings, new characters, and new arcs, but it never feels stagnant. Instead, it feels like a slow build, like something is constantly shifting under the surface, even in those quieter moments. There are sections where the story slows down to focus on emotional development or character growth, and those moments are just as important as the action driven scenes, because this book is not just about what is happening, it's about why it's happening and what it means for each character involved. For me, Heir of Fire was the point where I truly understood the depth of this series. I was already enjoying it before this book. I was hooked from Throne of Glass, but this is where I became fully invested. Celaena's journey felt more emotional and complex than ever before. The world felt larger and more dangerous, and the new characters added layers I wasn't expecting. Although I'm still not quite sure about Rowan. I'm reserving my judgment on him. But even when I struggled to keep track of everyone at times, I never felt disconnected from the story as a whole. There was always something pulling me forward, and I think that's the mark of a really strong fantasy book. Even when it's complex, it still keeps you emotionally engaged. Now, this is a 5-star read for me, without question. Heir of Fire is where the Throne of Glass series stops being just a fantasy adventure and starts becoming something much more expansive and emotionally driven. Yes, there are a lot of new characters. Yes, it can feel overwhelming at times, but the payoff is absolutely worth it, especially when it comes to characters like Manon Blackbeak and Abraxos, who bring something completely unforgettable to the story. And Celaena's arc in this book is one of the most compelling developments in the entire series so far. If you've read Heir of Fire, I would love to know where it sits for you in the series so far. Did you find the new characters overwhelming, or did you enjoy the expansion of the world? And if you're still working through the Throne of Glass series like me, I would be really curious to hear how your experience is unfolding as you go. Thank you ever so much for watching, and I would really appreciate it if you would like and subscribe. And thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.